And welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Again, my name is Gabe. I'm a tech evangelist with AWS, and we're coming to you live from AWS Summit in Sydney. With me is Dean.
Yes, Dean Samuels, Head of Solutions Architecture, Amazon Web Services, Hong Kong and Taiwan.
Welcome back, Dean. And we've got a new special guest on stage now because we have the next 15 minutes prepared to chat to you all about some exciting new announcements in storage. And with us is...
Luke Anderson, look after the storage business development team across Asia Pacific. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So we have two exciting new announcements that just came today and yesterday, is that right? Or
Correct.
2 days ago?
Yeah, Monday and Tuesday.
Very recent, Monday, Tuesday. What are those announcements?
So it's quite a privilege for me to actually do an AWS launch announcement. It's normally held for Andy Jassy at reInvent, but two really cool launches we did on Monday and Tuesday this week. The first one was EBS support for the Snowball Edge, and the second one, which came in a few hours ago, was Amazon S3 batch operations.
Right,
cool. Bit of a tongue twister.
So Luke, for the viewers, can you maybe just explain some of those acronyms that you just mentioned there? You mentioned EBS, you mentioned S3.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes people think about storage and it's immediately associated with S3, but storage with us and what you look after is more than just S3, right?
It is. So going quite quickly, breaking down storage into its core components, we have block storage, which is we support through Elastic Block Store. Then we also have our file storage through Amazon Elastic File Storage, and also with our newly launched Amazon FSx for Windows, which is really our file storage. And then, as you said, Dean, we have our object storage, which is supported through Amazon S3, which has 6 storage tiers beneath it.
Right.
So the Amazon S3 batch operations is really linked to that object storage.
Right.
Now, how it works is, typically if you have millions, billions of objects stored in your bucket, and you want to perform some management operations across them, you'd have to run custom code, you'd have to create your own.
I'm going to write a script that says, get me a list of all of the objects inside this bucket with this common key prefix, and then iterate over them and call some operations. Maybe copy this file to another bucket, maybe inspect it, maybe change the permissions on it, etc. Delete it. Okay.
And you normally, how I used to do it myself was you'd run it on a laptop like this, and you then create your own sort of for, while, do, done sort of loop to make sure it operates.
Right.
But then you go, well, if I've got a million objects, that's going to take a long time. How can I shut my laptop down?
Right. And if I've got a billion objects, and a billion objects is not unheard of, right?
No,
We're talking about a service that supports multiple trillions of objects, millions of requests per second for the service. And we have a lot of customers that will have these billions of objects.
We do.
And then you couple in, like you mentioned, with running scripts from your laptop and having to leave it open to run these and complete these. There's also a cost involved, right? With these API calls that you're making to S3.
And a network time.
Yeah, exactly. And so the batch operations are going to
It is. So where we see other customers as well, especially in the instance where you have billions of objects, they spin up an EC2 instance just to run their storage management tasks. So what S3 batch operations does now is takes all that overhead and burden away from our customers.
Right.
So now you can get an inventory list, or basically get a list of all the objects you want to perform an operation on, and then run a management process against them.
Right.
And that ranges from updating tags. So let's say you're running on a big project management, big project, and you want to name thousands of objects to a certain project for lifecycling. You can do that with a few simple clicks in the console.
Right.
Some of the really cool ones, though, is if you're a media organization and you've got lots of audio files, video files, and so on, that you're storing in Glacier, which is our cold storage archive. But you want to use them quickly, a breaking news, press release, you want to pull that content back into S3 for immediate use. It will take hours to write a code, to then run it, and then bring it back. Through batch operations, you can just do it through a few simple clicks, and then request retrievals from Glacier.
A batch retrieval from Glacier now.
Yeah.
Right. That's actually so awesome to see that we launched it yesterday, but there's actually no interruption to customers using the S3 service, right? We add these features as we go along, and obviously we want to minimize or actually eliminate that interruption. It's actually a quite good analogy that one of our distinguished engineers likened to S3, a really evolvable system that, when it started, or when it was released in 2006, it was like starting a single-engine Cessna plane, right? And whilst that plane's flying, it's been upgraded to a 737, then a group of 747s, and then a fleet of A380s.
While you're still flying in it.
While you're still flying, whilst you're changing passengers across plane to plane, right? So since 2006, Amazon S3 has really evolved into where it is today.
I mean, if you just look at it over the last 12 months, so as you heard, I just mentioned we have 6 storage tiers, 6 storage classes in S3.
Yep.
a year ago we had 3. In the last 12 months, we've launched one zone, which we can go into more detail, but it's where Amazon S3 as a minimum writes across 3 availability zones, which helps us create the 11 nines of durability.
Right.
With one zone of frequent access, we now have the 11 nines of durability, but within a single availability
Just
zone.
a reduced redundancy storage, is that right?
Similar, there was reduced redundancy storage,
Right.
but this is one zone of
Right.
frequent access.
Even more specifically, one zone, infrequently accessed.
Yeah. And then the other tiers we launched more at reInvent. We launched S3 Intelligent Tiering for our
I
customers.
love this. Tell them about this.
Yeah,
This is
so
great.
it's where customers who don't really understand their usage patterns between whether they need to keep it in standard, which is hot, or more in frequently accessed. So you don't need to access a file once every 30 days, but you don't have an understanding of where to move it because there's considerable cost savings between the 2 tiers. What intelligent tiering is a brand new storage class that takes that burden away from you and allows AWS, with its machine learning and algorithms, to actually start understanding and putting your objects and your content in the right storage class.
Thank you for that explanation. We've got a question here. Our first question from the viewers say, thank you, Skull Crusher for Life. He asked, or she asks, can you run a batch operation on Glacier and only pay for a specific item retrieval? Or does the scan across Glacier take all the items scanned out of Glacier's inactive status? Do we know?
So, yes, I do. So how you start a battery operation, you have to start with an inventory.
Yep.
You have to tell it what to operate on.
Okay.
And you can do that through 2 ways. One, log into your S3 bucket, go to the management tab, and in there, if you've enabled inventory reports, you'll see a list of inventories. You can then select that inventory and then go to operations, which takes you into the batch operations console, and then configure what you want. The second one is create your own CSV.
Yep.
Really simple prefix. It's bucket name, comma, object. So you can create whatever you want, as many or as little as many. I mean, if it's just one, I recommend just do it yourself.
Yes.
But if you've got thousands of them, create your manifest file or your inventory, use that as the source for batch operations, and then it will go and explicitly go and retrieve those items, those objects from the Glacier Vault.
Okay.
Right. And Luke, can you maybe explain certain use cases where customers might use this new feature? Because we also got things like S3 event notifications where S3 can react to certain actions that are being performed on the bucket, like uploading and deleting files. It sounds like this really complements that for existing files on the platform.
So one, you mentioned complementing. So back at reInvent, we launched, within Glacier, we launched Glacier notifications. So the challenge we had before and we heard to our customers was, when you make a retrieval from Glacier, you don't know when it lands back in your S3 bucket. You have to keep checking it. So what Restore Notifications does, it creates a notification using SNS to let you know when your object's ready to be back in S3. Now, let's use this again using a media example. You have thousands of images and video content you want to bring back. You create your inventory, you kick off the batch operations to retrieve back into S3, and then sit back. Just let it happen.
Right.
It'll run. You won't have to do anything. It will then send you a notification based on Glacier notifications back to batch operations to let you know when it's complete.
Right, and then you could always integrate that notification into some other type of automated system, right? So it's not, you're eliminating the human factor in that pipeline.
Well.
Yeah.
So there's, at launch, which is good, we launched yesterday. So you'll notice on Jeff Barr's blog, he wrote it about 5 hours ago, so it's a very fresh launch. With batch operations at launch, it supports 5 operations. One, which is changing the meta tags on each object, changing your access control list, basically your permissions of who can access the object, retrieving from Glacier, and one that we want to talk about is the Lambda function as well.
Right.
So you can actually kick off a Lambda function based on batch operations.
All right.
Nice.
Excellent.
So we've got around 5 minutes, maybe a little over 5 minutes left. And I want to make sure we spend time talking about our other
Yes.
exciting announcement.
Yeah.
The other one was about Snowball Edge with
Yeah.
EBS
Yeah.
volumes now. Let's unpack that. What is EBS again, and what is a Snowball? What is a Snowball Edge for our viewers?
Yeah, okay, good one. So back on Monday we launched EBS for Snowball Edge. So EBS is our block storage, and Snowball Edge is our ruggedized data transport and computation appliance that sits at a customer's premise or in complete remote locations. It's a self-cooling, powering, independent unit that customers can use that doesn't need to be in a data center, doesn't need to have constant network connectivity. So what we've launched, so if we go back in time...
Yeah, tell us the quick evolution about Snowballs.
Yeah, so it started sort of four years ago with the Snowball device. which is the ruggedized device for mainly to take data from remote locations and ingest it into your S3 bucket.
So it was something that we would ship out to a customer, basically a bunch of disks in a nice hardened enclosure.
Yeah.
They'd plug it into their systems, load a lot of data onto it, and by a lot I mean like what's the most you can put on Snowball?
Snowball's 80 terabytes, and
Yep.
the Snowball Edge is 100.
Right, so you can put up to 80 terabytes of data on one of these things, you ship it back to AWS, and we plug it in to our data centers and
Yep.
load that data onto typically S3, but maybe other places as well.
It goes into S3, it has to
Okay.
start in S3, because that's what
Yeah,
it's
so it goes in
supporting.
S3 and then maybe other places from there. Okay, so that was Snowballs.
So Snowball. Then in 2016 we launched AWS Snowball Edge, because we're hearing our customers wanted not only to have data landing on a device, they also wanted to do some high-level computation at the edge. So in 2016 we launched support for IoT Greengrass on there and Lambda, just to perform some computation at the edge. Then also we listened to our customers more. They're going, well, we want to do more than that. So in July last year, 2018, we launched EC2 on Snowball Edge. So now you've got this completely independent device that you can have in a complete remote location.
Using the same API that you're already comfortable with for interacting and spinning up virtual machines in Amazon EC2.
Yeah, exactly. So it's EC2 writing onto a Snowball device. What we've launched as of Monday is now block storage on the Snowball Edge. So again, we're listening to our customers. As customers are wanting to run more intensive workloads at the edge, they want to start spinning up more applications, some databases, which wasn't possible.
Yep.
Now with block storage, which is primarily the type of storage that applications and databases run on, our customers can now do that. And they can do it in a couple of variations as well. So with the Snowball Edge, it comes in two flavors, for want of a better word: storage optimized and compute optimized.
And how much storage can we put on these different types of optimized Snowball Edge devices?
So with the storage optimized, it's 80 terabytes. And with the compute optimized, it's 42 terabytes.
Okay.
Right.
So think about the workload think about a lot of streaming traffic. Think about a remote mine
Yep.
that is collecting a ton of sensors from vehicles, from people, from equipment that they want to capture, but they've got no live internet feed to take it into their AWS environment. They can capture that on the Snowball Edge and then transport that into AWS.
Or they could also just capture and compute on it right there. They might not need to even use it as a
Exactly.
transfer device.
Yeah.
It could just be a hardened mini data center.
Yeah, it's really
So-
useful for environments where you have that inconsistent network connectivity as well, right? So where you're running in a mine or an agricultural area, expensive network connectivity, not consistent, but you obviously don't want to lose access to your services.
Exactly.
Right. And so what about Storage Gateway, right? So Storage Gateway is another product of ours, and it sounds very similar to what you were saying in terms of EBS volumes and providing on-premise or on-the-edge type storage.
Yep.
Maybe talk about the
Sort of
use cases.
sits in the middle.
Yeah.
So we mentioned the block, file, and object storage. They're our core storage offerings that sit within AWS. We've just been talking about the Snowball Edge devices and Snowball devices. That is an offline storage and computation appliance. Where Snowball Edge sits in the middle is for your hybrid storage workloads.
Okay.
So where you have an on-premise virtual machine connecting into an AWS environment. And now it comes in three different sorts of flavors. One, you mentioned block storage. So with Storage Gateway, we have one called Volume Gateway, which is block storage, which is presented to you on-premise as a volume that you can mount and use and run your applications on, but the data's stored in AWS.
Right. So why so many storage options?
You're going to have to answer quickly. We've got 30 seconds left.
As with all of our services, 95% of all of our features and services are based off customer feedback.
Yep.
Why do we have so many of these services? It's because that's what we're being asked of.
Sure.
And you'll see, as I mentioned, over the last 12 months, we've doubled the amount of storage tiers because our customers are requesting it.
It's all about having the right tool or the right service or the right
Absolutely.
flavor of that service for the right job. Right?
Exactly.
And more choice means you can optimize your workloads better, save more money, and generally be more efficient.
Exactly.
Great.
Yep.
Well, thanks so much for joining us
Absolute
for an
pleasure.
Thanks,
exciting
Luke. Appreciate
session
it.
with 2 announcements on storage. And thank you everyone online. I appreciate your questions and your interactivity. Please keep it coming and stay tuned. We have more coming to you live from Sydney Summit shortly.